The U.S.-Israeli conflict with Iran is expanding today to more countries and more targets across the Middle East. Iran is retaliating with strikes on Israeli and U.S. allies across the region, while the assault inside Iran continues. The U.S. is signaling that the conflict with Iran will not end quickly. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is insisting regime change isn't the goal, but he's also highlighting the killing of Iran's supreme leader.
This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change, and the world is better off for it.
Now, this is video from inside Tehran. Israel and the U.S. are now in the third day of missile strikes and bombings. U.S. President Trump is not giving a timeline when the attacks on Iran will end, but the president indicated the conflict could go on for weeks. Meanwhile, Global Affairs Canada says there are more than 85,000 Canadians registered in the Middle East, and that number could rise. Thousands of flights have been cancelled. Ottawa says consular services are limited. Anyone in the Middle East is being advised to avoid areas with critical infrastructure and military sites because they could be targeted for attack. To local news, Conservative MPs in BC are calling for an independent federal inquiry into the Tumbler Ridge shooting. The tragedy took the lives of 8 victims last month, most of them children. They say an independent inquiry would examine how the mass shooting happened, including issues of mental health and access to firearms.
Families across the country have gotten thousands of notices of just mourning with us, prayers and thoughts, and we sure appreciate that. But we have a responsibility to so that it never happens again, and I think that inquiry will find those answers and make recommendations, and then it's our job to follow through what those recommendations are.
Last week, Premier David Eby said his government will use all available resources to find answers to the mass shooting in Tumbler Ridge. And the family of a 12-year-old boy who was killed in Tumbler Ridge is burying him today. His body arrived in Zambia, where he was born. Abel Mwansa and his family moved to Canada just 3 years ago for his father's career opportunities. A family friend says the little boy was respectful and responsible, and his death has deeply affected everyone who knew him. And another person has been killed in an avalanche in BC. It happened over the weekend in the Kootenay Pass region. Mounties say the avalanche swept 2 snowmobilers away on Saturday. Riders in the area managed to dig out both riders, but a 23-year-old man died at the scene. This is the 5th avalanche death since December in BC's backcountry. Fresh snow and strong winds have created potential for large, destructive avalanches in BC's interior. Officials are urging everyone to check on the conditions before heading out. And the number of people who died due to toxic drugs in BC significantly dropped last year. The BC Coroner's Service says there was a 21% decline. Officials say there could be multiple reasons why. They range from a shift to smoking drugs to widespread harm reduction measures. One expert says samples at drug testing sites found fentanyl to be less concentrated, while other drugs were being mixed in. The Public Health Agency of Canada also says the population most at risk has declined. That's due to the high number of deaths that have already happened in past years. That's it for me for now. Thanks for watching this morning. This is CBC News BC. I'm Leanne Young. Coming up, BC Today with Amy Bell sitting in for Michelle Elliott.
afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Days after the U.S. and Israel first launched strikes against Iran, the conflict is widening by the hour, drawing in other countries around the region, sparking fears for the global economy and leaving thousands of travelers stranded. But what impact will this have on the Iranian communities around the world? And we kick off our new Menopause Mondays series today with two experts on hand to answer your questions and help you navigate perimenopause healthcare in BC. And thank you for joining us on radio, TV, and on live stream. And you might notice the show looks just a little different today. Some unexpected technical issues have moved us back to our original home here in Studio 10 at CBC Vancouver. But you can call us now on our top story. How do you feel about the U.S. war in Iran? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call 1-800-825-5950 or hit pound 690. You can also email us at bctoday@cbc.ca. And Iran's Red Crescent Society says at least 555 people have been killed in continued U.S. airstrikes on the country. In remarks earlier today at the White House, U.S. President Donald Trump gave his rationale for the conflict.
Following our obliteration of Iran's nuclear program in Operation Midnight Hammer a short while ago, we warned Iran not to make any attempt to rebuild at a different location because they were unable to use the ones that we so powerfully blew up. But they ignored those warnings and refused to cease their pursuit of nuclear weapons. In addition, the regime's conventional ballistic missile program was growing rapidly and dramatically, and this posed a very clear, colossal threat to America and our forces stationed overseas. The regime already had missiles capable of hitting Europe and our bases, both local and overseas, and would soon have had missiles capable of reaching our beautiful America.
Trump says his objectives in the war are to destroy Iran's naval and missile capabilities, prevent the country from obtaining a nuclear weapon, and ensuring the regime doesn't have the ability to arm, fund, or direct terrorist activities outside the country. The U.S. and Israeli-led war has now expanded into Lebanon, where at least 52 people were killed and 150 others wounded in Israeli strikes. And we want to hear from you. How do you feel about this U.S. war in Iran? How do you feel about the Canadian government's support of the U.S. bombing in Iran? Call us now. Just hit pound 690 on your cell phone, or you can call 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. That's 604-669-3733. And you can email bctoday@cbc.ca or leave a comment on our TikTok Live. Fred Soofi is a member of the Canadian Iranian Foundation, and he joins us in studio. Fred, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
How are you feeling today after the weekend's bombing in your home country?
How do I feel? I feel very sad and also momentarily happy. You know, when I heard that dictator, which is Ali Khamenei, was killed, I was happy. But when I start deeply thinking, says what is going to happen next? Because this is important. You want to be happy, but then in the moment you are happy, and then you will think, what is the next? And then when you deeply think, I'm not really happy.
And when you talk about what comes next, what is it you're feeling so unsettled
very
about?
Uncertain. See, war is bad. Doesn't matter for whatever reason. I hope people of Iran were able to topple this regime and bring. And what is the aim? You know, people of Iran, they want democracy, they want human rights, they want right to live like a normal people. And that's what that regime did not provide them. And whoever asked that right, they were killed, they were tortured, they were imprisoned. Right now, my first concern is 50,000 or more of the political prisoners in Iran, because they are in very grave danger. Like still in a prison, still they like there's a guard, there's a the regime is still there. It's not gone. This is the danger. Yes, some of them are being eliminated, but the regime is still functioning. As you see, even the missiles are hitting Israel and some other area in the region. So it's really, I hope this war finishes, but I hope this regime is gone, and then who else is going to replace that regime? This is very uncertain. I don't think anybody knows.
What would you hope to see happen in terms of
I hope
next steps?
I hope to see the regime changes for sure, but the replacement will be a regime which is more brings more democracy, will of the people, then free election, really free election by observation of the UN. These are what we want. And unfortunately, what is happening in Iran, the war started by Donald Trump, which is not very trustworthy person. Even, we are in Canada, we don't trust him. Just imagine.
Right.
So, but the people in Iran right now, they did trust him because he said he's going to eliminate the regime. But if they start to destroy the country, I think people will be very, very sad and angry.
We do have a call that's come in. I want to get to this. Ken in Ladysmith. Hi, Ken. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And what are your thoughts on this Iranian conflict?
Well, I think we shouldn't be divided. On the one side, people who are opposed to the Iranian government must necessarily support the bombing, or if you're opposed to the bombing, then you have to pretend that the Iranian government is a democratic or in some way popular government.
Right.
It is, in my opinion, a dictatorship, and a brutal one at that. But I'm not in favor of the U.S. and Israel going in there because they have their own goals. I mean, if it was a question of freedom that they wanted, they could bring freedom to people in Gaza. And I think we see right now in Gaza the freedom that the U.S. and the Israel are in favor of. So they don't come with any positive motive. They have their own goals in this. And I look back at the attack that happened against Iraq. I guess it was as far back as 2003. And what followed from that was not democracy, was not a better life necessarily for people in Iraq. In fact, when in 2011, when there was a wave of democratic struggles known as the Arab Spring, one of the countries that was left out was Iraq, because they had been so shattered by the wars that they've been through and so shattered by the foreign occupation that they didn't participate in that Arab Spring movement, in that movement for democracy. So I mean, the Iranian people have shown they have a great capacity to overthrow a dictatorship. That's what they did in 1979 when they overthrew the Shah. They were out in their hundreds of thousands in the street. They marched right against the army. They marched right into the machine guns of the Shah, but they were in such numbers that the army was afraid to shoot them all down, and eventually they defeated that Shah's government. And I think I'm in sympathy with the anti-government movement in Iran, but I don't think that that should lead me to support attacks from the United States and Israel.
All right, Ken, thank you so much for sharing that. And I could see you reacting. What are your thoughts on it?
So your caller says the U.S. and Israel they want their own benefit. I agree with that. But the thing is, the benefit can be if there is a democracy in Iran, if the 90 million of the people are free, it is good for U.S. and Israel. So Israel doesn't have a threat in next door. So yes, it benefits, but so benefits people of Iran too, if that happens. And then comparing a 1979 revolution in Iran by today is completely different.
How so?
First of all, completely different. You know, how you can't. And then comparing with the other region like Iraq or Venezuela, they're all different. Iran is a different country. Iran is not just like this. So many educated people, so it's just different.
We are seeing a lot of rallies here in Vancouver against the Islamic Republic. Thousands of people have taken to the streets. What are these protests, in fact, calling for?
They're calling for democracy. They're calling for, before they were calling elimination of the Khomeini and this regime. Now it happened. So they were asking, and also some of them, they were asking for Prince Reza Pahlavi to come back, which I agree some people are coming, but not everybody. So this is the thing. But there was a demonstration which, like myself, I participated on the demonstration. But my demand was release of political prisoners, limit the execution. But I went there because the people were there, and I wanted other people to hear my voice. But unfortunately, those demonstrators or the organizer of that demonstration, they did not have any slogan or any demand for release of political prisoners. I don't know why.
Okay.
So they were saying, I asked them, and they were saying, if this regime gone, then we don't have a political prisoners. But I said, the regime is still there. We still have political prisoners.
The figurehead is gone, but the people doing their work are still remaining.
Yeah, but people. And the thing is, those political prisoners are very, very important because there are so many leaders in that prisons now. So they capture the effective people. So if they come out, I think will be different.
I've got another call that's come in, Fred. This one from Peter in North Cowichan. Hi, Peter. What are your thoughts on today's topic?
Oh, I love lots of thoughts. I visited there in '74, backpacking across Asia, and I have a close friend who's back in Iran now. He's a Baha'i Irani. And I remember I read this is all written in history, but the last secular parliamentary democracy in Iran was in 1952, my birth year, the year that which ended then because when the U.S. instigated a coup because the Prime Minister Mossadegh was discussing possibly nationalizing their oil. And he overthrew the democracy and installed the Shah as a dictator. And my Baha'i friend, who I met when he was living and working over here, he's now back in Iran, so I have to be very careful not to use his name. But he actually participated as a Baha'i faith believer, participated in the '79 revolution. Simply to get rid of the Shah, and he's said a couple of times, it didn't turn out as I'd hoped. But anyway, I guess what I'm thinking of, we the West created this mess because they were a secular democracy until we, I guess the U.S. and in this case the CIA, overthrew them. I'd really like to hear what your friend has to say about this, and can we believe that the Shah's son might be a road to democracy?
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for the question. And I emigrated to Canada in 1972. Okay. So when the revolution happened, I was here, but I still followed a lot about Iran. So the time was different. See, the time was different. Shah was, yes, a dictator, but not as, you cannot compare dictator with dictator, but these dictators are completely different. And then Shah did not kill as many people as they are doing now. And then you have to consider the time. The time was when there was a Vietnam War just finished. Just imagine how many Americans they wanted. They were different. There was a Cuba, there was a Salvador Allende in Chile, the atmosphere of revolution. Yeah. And then people of Iran weren't, like they were, religion still was a topic. Still, the Shah did not do very much about that type of freedom, so people get educated about the system, about the democracy. Like I remember, when I was in my youth, I could not even read a book which was just ordinary book about politics. So this was the danger. But you're talking about the prince. I don't think this prince, Reza Pahlavi, is going to be like his father. No, he's not going to be like his father because he is educated in things. And the time, people don't want Shah anymore, like they used to be then. So I don't think that's a big threat.
What leaders in Iran and outside of the country are people, backing to come in and take control of the government?
That is unfortunately, we do not have the real one. I mean, the only one right now is the Reza Pahlavi, the prince. Because,
and tell us about Reza.
Because there is the other one are being eliminated, and that's the only one. But the question is, he says he's not going to be. He's going to be for transition period. Then people are going to vote for the system they want.
Right.
They want monarchy, they want Shah, they want republic, whatever they want. That's the choice of the people. But unfortunately, some people don't believe him because of what happened in 1979. Because when Khomeini was coming, he was doing lots of this kind of promises too. When I come, it's going to be a free vote, it's going to be free this, free that, and he didn't do it. So that's why the people don't believe. But I believe him more than Khomeini. Okay. That's all I can say.
In a statement, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand said Canada supports the United States acting to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons and to prevent its regime from further threatening international peace and security. What do you think about that response to the attacks?
The thing is, yes, they do. But what I liked about the announcement, this is the announcement which Ms. Anand did before, and that was they said we will not establish any diplomatic relation with Iran till the regime is changed. So that's a really good one. The European didn't say that, but Canada said the regime is changed. So they want regime to be changed. Now they say they are supporting U.S. With this war. But the thing is, I don't know how can Canada support a war. But I mean, if it's limited, yes. But if it's war which is going to destroy a country, no, you are not going to support that type of war. It's just difficult to say because the thing is, people of Iran, for a while, they said, yes, they want U.S. to come, and they were so desperate.
They wanted any help.
They want help. But the thing is, the only help they wanted, I think they were saying, just kill the Khomeini and those regime. But I mean, regime change, what is really people want to know. And when the regime changes, what other regime is going to come back? And that is important. You want democracy. And I think people of Iran now they want, they're not going to give up if there is other dictatorship is going to come.
No.
But right now the danger is, I don't know, but the danger is U.S. trying to make a deal with some element of the regime right in Iran. Mm-hmm. And then other puzzling is they killed Ahmadinejad. So Ahmadinejad, yes, wasn't in power now, but when he was the president, what he did, he distributed some money to the unadvantaged people, to poor people. So he is popular between some poor people. So when they eliminated him, maybe, I don't know, maybe they want some people in present regimes, they don't have any competition. It's very complicated. It's just like this answer, which these are my question too. I can't have an answer for some of them.
And I suppose that's what's so difficult. It's so much is just waiting to see what will happen next.
Yes, what will happen next? But when I had see, this is that I was happy. Khomeini and regime was eliminated, but this happiness is gone now. I'm not happy any. You know how it is? You're happy for a moment, but now I'm thinking what my countrymen are. Children are being bombed.
Have you talked to any of your friends or family that
I don't
are still
have much family there.
No.
And the internet is.
It's
shut
difficult
down
to get
again.
any information.
You can't get any information,
Yeah.
and you don't know what is information. But I said, please, this is my asking of Canadian. Please support freedom of those prisoners, the people who are being detained. This is very, very important. This will help the democracy. We have a leader there. We have a people there. So they have been detained, and they have to be. To support Amnesty International, we at the Amnesty International are trying to take some steps so they can be released, hopefully. And no execution. That's very bad.
Fred, I really appreciate you coming in to
Thank you
talk
very
with
much
us
for
today.
having me.
Obviously, we will continue to find out the latest information. It's a quickly changing situation, but I really appreciate your insight.
Thank you very much for having me. And I said, I don't have an answer for
I know.
I don't think anybody has, but that was the best way I could guess what is going to happen. And I hope this regime is gone. Soon. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Fred.
Bye now.
Fred Soofi is a member of the Iranian Canadian Foundation. It is 12:27, and this is BC Today. U.S. President Donald Trump is warning Iranian authorities to lay down their arms and vowed to fight on until U.S. objectives in the country are reached, even if it means the death of more American soldiers. Early Edition guest host Michelle Elliott spoke with Parsa Ali Rezaiah. He's a research assistant at the Center for Comparative Muslim Studies at SFU.
I think the costs of war, it needs to be understood, I think, by a wide variety of people in the population, Iranians, Canadians, etc. I think this is going to last. This is going to be a wound that's going to persist for a very long time.
How do you square that? I spoke with two Iranian Canadians in the last half hour who had that the feeling, understanding, or empathizing with the celebrations that they're seeing among Iranians across the country here in Vancouver, as well as that anxiety about war.
Yes.
And that idea that the U.S. has instigated a war in Iran. How do you square those two things?
I think it needs to be understood in a way where, people have their sentiments. People very much, a lot of people, especially in the diaspora, were opposed to this government, to this apparatus that was set up, this hyper-securitized state, deeply repressive. At the same time, I think a lot of us celebrate the death of a tyrant in many ways, no matter where they are. The implications of how this was done, they're great. The consequences, the magnitude of the consequences, it's going to be great as well.
Parsa Ali Rezaiah is a research assistant at the Center for Comparative Muslim Studies at SFU. And it is now time for the CBC local news to 12:30 with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. We begin with some breaking news. Daylight savings time will now be permanent here in BC. The provincial government says the spring forward on March 8th will be the last time change in the province. The government says the move will help improve people's health, reduce disruptions with the time changes, and means more light during the winter months. 12-year-old Abel Mwanza Jr. has been laid to rest in Zambia almost 3 weeks after he was killed in the Tumbler Ridge mass shooting. Mwanza's father posted the boy's funeral ceremony on social media, showing a blue casket lowered into a grave while mourners sang hymns. The boy's family had moved to Canada from Zambia 3 years ago. And a $475,000 settlement has been approved in the class action lawsuit stemming from Lionel Messi's no-show for a game against the Whitecaps. The BC Supreme Court approved the settlement over alleged misleading marketing leading up to the game in 2024. The Whitecaps and MLS were both defendants in the suit, and the settlement, minus lawyer fees, will be donated to 3 BC sports-related charities. And now the forecast on the North Coast. Rain this afternoon with a high of 6. Highs to minus 11 with a chance of flurries in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, cloudy with a high of 7. Highs from 9 to 12 with lots of sunshine this afternoon in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 12 as well. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, mainly sunny this afternoon with highs from 11 to 14. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you very much for Rob. Some big changes in the way we change time around here. So thank you for that. And thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, live streaming on the CBC News app, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. Now, on Friday, we asked for your reaction after video was released of Mayor Ken Sim making false allegations against Vancouver City Councillor Sean Orr. Here's what some of you had to say. Kathleen wrote, "It is clear that Ken Sim and ABC are lying to and manipulating the Chinese community with these lies and have not apologized or retracted their comments to them. And it makes me wonder what else they are lying about. It's also clear that Ken Sim, if he does not resign, and if we as a city do not make him resign, he is no better than Trump." Marion wrote, "What has happened to the quality of our public servants? I am very disheartened to hear of the latest scandal in Vancouver city politics. We've had our own ongoing gong show here in Kamloops with our mayor and council. I sincerely hope we can wipe the slate clean in Kamloops and start with a completely new mayor and council in October." And Joanne wrote, "I can appreciate your guest addressing a legal case, but saying this, what we know about Trump and his administration, telling truths and using situations to create a diversion should absolutely be tested in our legal system, if for no reason other than getting the message to politicians that this is unacceptable." Thank you to everybody who joined us. For many women, midlife becomes a period of uncertainty as perimenopause symptoms emerge, often accompanied by limited information and unclear pathways to appropriate care, despite affecting half the population. Now, the provincial government and the Government of Canada have signed an agreement for the implementation of National Pharmacare in BC, which will cover the costs of more menopause hormone replacement medications for women and people going through this midlife experience. This coverage began yesterday on March 1st. So we're asking you, how will this hormone replacement therapy coverage affect you? What questions do you have about navigating perimenopause healthcare here in BC? Call us now. Just hit pound 690 on your cell phone, or you can call 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca or leave a comment on our TikTok Live. Joining us now in studio are two professionals who work in BC's healthcare. Dr. Stephanie Fisher is the interim Senior Medical Director of Gynecology and specialized personalized programs at BC Women's Hospital and Health Centre. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Fisher.
Good afternoon.
And Cally Wesson is the president and CEO of the BC Women's Health Foundation. Good afternoon to you, Cally.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you both for coming in with us. Dr. Fisher, I'll start with you. Tell us more about this new funding for women experiencing perimenopause here in BC.
Essentially, there has been pharmacare funding for a limited number of menopausal hormone therapies previously, but the amount of the funding was income-based. So now the funding will be across the board on all of the previously covered medications, but there will be no cost to women seeking that kind of care.
And before I suppose we go any further, I do want to just clarify some terms that we often see thrown around interchangeably. Perimenopause and menopause, or menopause, there's even post-menopause. Can you easily sort of break down these three phases?
Yeah, for sure. I think the tricky part is that menopause is defined as really once you've had 12 consecutive months with no menstrual cycle.
Right.
But of course, for most women, they only know that timing in retrospect. And we consider perimenopause all of the many years leading up to that. And for the average menopausal woman, they experience about 5 to 7 years of symptoms prior to the last menstrual period. So quite a long time that they can be very symptomatic prior to the actual date of menopause.
And Cally, I'll bring you in too. As an advocate for women's health care in BC, how do you see this new hormone replacement therapy covering or impacting women?
Yeah, I think it does two things. One, it definitely says women's health is important. And I think that is a key piece as we talk about women's health. And then number two, anytime something's available to everyone, I think it's important. Yeah.
It is very important. And it is something that has sort of long been pushed aside. So it is nice to see it coming to the forefront and being important. I would love to have people call in and share their ideas and their journeys with us. You can call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Let us know if you have any questions about this new medical coverage, if you have any questions about perimenopause and menopause. And also, if you're going through this time, if you're comfortable sharing your journey with us, we would love to know. Dr. Fisher, before yesterday, BC Pharmacare did cover some hormone therapies already. So where are we seeing this new coverage differing?
The new coverage is really in the amount of the coverage. As I said previously, it was income-based, so women would often have to pay for a portion of their coverage, or they would be quite restricted in which medications were actually covered. The current medications are a little bit more broad, so we have lots of options of oral, transdermal, and vaginal preparations that are more available to women. So it's really important because it eliminates cost as a barrier to treatment for women across the province.
And I know that there's already, wait lists, to access midlife health care for a lot of women. So, now that it will become more accessible for women, is the province equipped to sort of take on that influx of patients who now want to access this free hormone replacement therapy?
Yeah, I think the truth is that the vast majority of menopause care for an average healthy woman experiencing menopausal symptoms can be delivered in the community with their family doctors or nurse practitioners. There's also a number of other providers, naturopathic doctors, et cetera, that are certified as menopause practitioners through the Menopause Society. So there's lots of care available. I think there's a bit of a misconception that all of this care needs to be provided by specialists, and that's really not the truth. It really can be done by primary care doctors.
Cally, what do you hear from women, across BC when it comes to finding a perimenopause, practitioner, especially I would think in remote communities where it can be even more difficult?
Yeah, one of the really great things about our Women's Health Research Institute at BC Women's, working with BC Women's Hospital and Health Centers, we actually have a webinar that gets the right information out to women. And I think that's something that's really key because I know we all follow social media and we're like, what's true, what's not? Really ensuring our Women's Health Research Institute is really set up to ensure the right information gets out to women across BC. And that's really important.
Where do you think we are still seeing the gaps, though, when it comes to care for perimenopause and menopausal women within BC and within Canada? We often say it affects half the population, and yet it doesn't seem to have that greater importance to some of the other issues.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So women make up 51% of the population and gave birth to the other 49% of the population. But really, like when you look at national health research funding, only 7% of funding goes into women's health. And really, that's what our foundation is trying to change through philanthropy. And one of the great examples of how philanthropy has really stepped up to work with the hospital, with government, is the Complex Menopause Clinic at BC Women's Hospital and Health Centre. So we are seeing, while there's still inequities in women's health, we are seeing positive movement forward, and that's something that we can celebrate. This month is Women's Health Research Month, so we're really shining a spotlight. We won't have changes in care without great research. And I think Dr. Fisher can talk about research happening at the WHRI that's going to look at MHT and getting Canadian data and all of those things at the Women's Health Research Institute.
Absolutely. A lot of this policy discussion that we're having was informed by the HER-BC study that was produced by the Women's Health Research Institute. And they really looked to survey 2,000 women across British Columbia to identify what are the health impacts for them and what are the economic impacts. And that same group is then looking at the effects of this policy on health outcomes and economic outcomes for the province as well. So we look forward to continuing our partnership with the WHRI to get more information on what the impact of this policy is.
Sounds great. We do have a call that's come in from Janet in Nanaimo. Hi, Janet.
Hi there.
Hi. And what are your thoughts on today's topic?
Oh, I think it's wonderful. I have a question. I started HRT probably over 10 years ago. At the time, I was diagnosed with osteoporosis, and I was also menopausal. And so I'm still on HRT, and I'm just wondering if I would be covered for that.
Dr. Fisher?
You would actually. The indication of hormone therapy for osteoporosis prevention and treatment is one that is included by Health Canada. So particularly for women who are symptomatic with menopausal symptoms, HRT is an often commonly used medication, but there are other options as well. If you're no longer symptomatic with menopausal symptoms, you could switch to a different type of osteoporosis medication that would be equivalent to hormone therapy.
Okay. And in terms of what is being covered, are there, treatments that aren't going to be covered by this new program?
There are a few. There are a couple of newer medications that are not yet covered in pharmacare, and those include things like fezolinetant and medications that work more centrally for the management of hot flashes, and some other more recent hormone therapy combinations. But truly, the ones that are covered are really the bread and butter that would be applicable to the average
Most
woman.
commonly, okay.
Yeah.
I've got some emails that have come in. An anonymous viewer says, I began perimenopause at 42. I am now 65. I was unable to afford medication. Is it useful at my age now to start HRT? Also, why did I gain 60 pounds overnight? Diet and exercise have not changed, but I inherited somebody else's body. And that's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it is, something that a lot of women do talk about, that suddenly their bodies seem very foreign to them. It can be a difficult transition of sort of figuring out who you are now. Cally, where do we need to support women as they're going through this journey?
And I would really go back to that menopause webinar, because we do have a webinar on that that's getting that best information out to women. I think accessing the best information is really important. And, I also think just even this show talking about that feeling of I'm not just in my body right now. Things have changed. Like, we're all going through that. It's not every woman will have a baby, but every woman will go through menopause. And I think just the fact that with this announcements is really elevating the conversation around menopause is really important.
And it's still uncomfortable for some people. It still feels like a bit of a taboo, but I feel like the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, it can impact a woman, but it impacts her career, her family. It can be quite far-reaching.
Yeah, it's quite dramatic, actually. The Her BC study did address a lot of that.
Yeah.
And it's quite shocking, actually. They reported that a third of women will report that menopausal symptoms impact their work. 1 in 4 women will say that they've reduced their hours or had to take time off work because of menopausal symptoms that are unmanaged. And 1 in 10 women leave the workforce because of unmanaged menopausal symptoms. So the economic impact of menopause symptoms is quite significant.
Yeah, very much so. I do want to address from our emails. She was saying she was 65 and wondering if it was useful at her age to start HRT.
Yeah, generally speaking, hormone therapy is considered to be safe when started within 10 years of menopause. And unfortunately, her menopause was earlier than the average. So she would have to speak with her doctor about, what specific other health issues that she has that might preclude her from using hormone therapy at this stage. But there may be other non-hormonal alternatives that would be safe for her at that age.
Okay. We've got another call that's come in. This one from Mary Jane on the Sunshine Coast. Hi, Mary Jane.
Hi. I hope you guys are well today.
Very well. Thank you.
Good. So I have a question. I've been on Vagifem for, a couple of years now. And yesterday I went and refilled it. The pharmacist said it was on the list, but he couldn't figure out how to process it. So, I had to spend $300, and I'm just kind of wondering what's up with that.
Oh, that is unfortunate. I'm very sorry that you had to pay that out of pocket, but hopefully they'll be able to rectify that.
I would assume they should be able to reimburse for that. Our understanding is that it is being managed at the level of the pharmacies.
Okay.
But in fairness, yesterday was the first day, so there may be a bit of time to work out the kinks. But yeah.
I would head back there, and hopefully they'll have it all sorted out by now, Mary Jane. Thanks for the call. We've got an email in from Joanne in Victoria. She writes, I think the bigger problem is most doctors don't discuss this with their patients. My family doctor, who I won't leave because I know I won't get a new doctor, and the doctors are so pressured for time with patient care, it's not even a possibility for patients. This is a 40-year-old problem. Now that we have a healthcare system on life support, it's fine and dandy to have health plan changes, but you still need an assessment and prescription. And I suppose that is another part of the conversation is it is difficult for some people to just access healthcare to get a doctor that will be able to prescribe this for them.
Absolutely. And that is a difficult problem for many women and for many women who don't have a GP or a nurse practitioner in the province. What we recommend to our patients generally is that they download an app called the MQ6. It's a menopause questionnaire that is literally 6 questions that addresses menopause symptoms. And if you bring that to your doctor, it's a really nice starting point to have that conversation. And also for family doctors or nurse practitioners who are not as familiar, it also has a physician algorithm to help you guide starting menopause care.
Okay.
So it's a great resource for patients to access to start that conversation with their doctors.
Wonderful. We'll get a call in now from Zoe in Edgewood. Hi, Zoe. Thanks for joining the show.
Hey, thanks so much for taking my call. I among other female friends too, and it's a conversation that we've had that we don't have an answer to. Just a few of us in perimenopause experiencing more frequent cycles, more heavy cycles, debilitating heavy cycles. They're lasting 2 weeks plus. I and some friends of mine have met with specialists to discuss, and the message that we're getting is that HRT won't help these symptoms. So I'm just wondering from your expertise, because more info is better than not, what your thoughts are around this.
You raise an excellent point, and I would probably agree in most cases, hormone therapy, menopausal hormone therapy, because the dose is very low, is not enough to override a natural menstrual cycle that's gone awry. And so, but there are many good treatment options, and that can be easily started with a family doctor and might be things like low-dose oral contraceptives, which are very safe to take right up to the transition to menopause. We often use progestin IUDs to manage some of those menstrual symptoms. And the MHT is really more geared at managing things like hot flashes, sleep disturbances, and those kinds of symptoms.
All right. Thank you. Zoe, I hope that helps you. Not exactly fun, this stage of life that so many of us are in. Cally, we were talking earlier about new research and how we're finding out a lot more, and a lot more of a focus is going into finding out more. How does that translate, sort of, the research get translated into public awareness and clinical practice as well?
Yeah. So March is actually Women's Health Research Month, and Minister Josie Osborne proclaimed it at that.
Yes.
We are very fortunate in BC because we have one of the strongest, largest women's health research institutes in Canada, and in fact, it's world leading. And any change in policy, in care, it all starts with research. So when we look at that, only 7% of national funding going into women's health research, we have to change that. And really the quickest way to change that is through philanthropy. And yeah, it's nice to see this conversation and other conversations, because without us funding women's health research, care is not going to change.
Another call that's come in from Suzanne in Vancouver. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi.
Hi, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. I have been menopausal for about 3 years now. So not peri, postmenopausal, I guess.
Okay.
And I have, I've been taking an SSRI, which has been managing hot flashes really well, and likely mood swings as well. But I have found since menopause that I'm having a lot of lower spine and hip issues. And I've been going through my doctor, who referred me to the VGH spine clinic, and I've been to a sports medicine clinic. And they're all kind of like, well, you've got good range of motion and strength, so keep doing what you're doing. And I'm like, I can't keep doing what I'm doing because I'm in pain all the time.
Right.
So I'm wondering if it makes sense to go to a clinic specifically for menopause therapy. I know those spaces are limited, and so I don't, necessarily want to waste space that somebody else needs, but I'm not getting any relief or any real, treatment at all, I guess. So, yeah, love to have thoughts.
Sure. I would say the difficulty with managing menopause symptoms is that there's so many different symptoms that can be associated with menopause, and so many other symptoms that happen at midlife that are independent of estrogen. We know that estrogen helps many things like hot flashes and sleep disturbance, but doesn't really have an impact on things like joint pain, low back pain, cognitive things. There's a whole bunch of other things that estrogen really doesn't play a role. So I would say probably I would carry on the path of looking at other management options other than MHT, because we wouldn't really expect it to benefit low back pain.
Okay. I hope that helps and that you actually are able to get a little bit of relief. We've got an email from Jillian. She writes, my question is whether or not testosterone gel will be covered in BC. This never seems to get included in general menopause, perimenopause care. I'm a primary care provider myself, and I'm lucky to know how to read the research and know how important testosterone can be for some people. My OBGYN did not mention it, but my family physician was willing to explore it with me. So is this covered under the new plan?
Testosterone therapy is not covered under the new plan, and part of that is the limitation of there is no product available in Canada that's approved for women. So currently when we prescribe testosterone as part of MHT, it's actually a compounded preparation based on a pharmaceutical that's approved for men. So we're using it as an off-label product. So unfortunately, there's no compounded hormone therapy that is being covered under this plan.
All right. Another email from Alexandra. She says, hi there. I'm a 45-year-old woman and wondering, under the old plan, my patch has been covered, which I'm thankful for. However, due to an allergic reaction to the patch, I've been using an inhaler to my skin to prevent a reaction. I was wondering if I can get the Pfizer brand instead under the new plan. It's a lot smaller and I don't have a reaction to using that. Dr. Green, do you know about that? Oh, Dr. Fisher, sorry.
I am not sure that they're covering the non-generic estrogen patches. But that said, there are a number of different estrogen patches that they are covering. They're covering estradiol, they're covering a Climera patch. So it depends on which patch you were using before, but there might be an alternative patch that is covered. Or there's also transdermal gel and cream that are being covered as well, and they're equivalent to the patch.
All right. We did get a call from Lynn, who's a pharmacist on Salt Spring Island, and she said estrogene is also not covered, and Vagifem, I believe, is not covered in the new pharmacare. Is that true?
They're essentially covering the lowest cost alternatives of both of those products. So Premarin cream, it would be roughly equivalent to Estrogyne. And Vagifem is estradiol. It's a 10 microgram dose, and that's being approved as Imvexi, which is just the same medication, but a slightly different formulation.
Okay. Leslie writes, it is very important to include a very overlooked complication of HRT for women who have a family history of breast cancer. While the benefits of HRT are great, it directly triggers and contributes to hormone-positive breast cancer. That was the case for me. The bulk of doctors and nurse practitioners are unaware of this, and I would urge the correlations to be part of the education and information so women can be empowered in their choices. I'll talk to both of you about that, but I'll start with you, Dr. Fisher.
Yeah, I think that's one of those very specific situations where there are health concerns that might not make you fit into the cookie cutter approach to normal menopausal hormone therapy. Right. I would say, though, that I treat a lot of patients who have hereditary breast cancer in their family, although they don't themselves have breast cancer. And really the overwhelming risk factor in that scenario is their family history. And then any contribution of hormone therapy to that risk is actually really quite trivial.
Okay.
So then it becomes a really personal choice for that woman, what benefits she perceives in terms of her overall quality of life. So it's not a contraindication.
Okay. And Cally, we see this, though. There is often misinformation. There can be a lot of tricky things to navigate when you're in this inevitable stage of life. What would you want to say to women who feel, sort of underserved, but maybe themselves feel undereducated about this stage that they've reached in their life?
Yeah, I think the key thing is really to make sure you're getting your information from a trusted source. There is so much misinformation out there, especially around menopause. And I think, whether it's going to our Women's Health Research Institute website, whether it's talking with your family doc, whether it's making sure you're just getting the right information. And and like Dr. Fisher said, not everything is cookie cutter, so you need to really make sure you talk to your physician.
All right.
Yeah.
It has been so wonderful to have both of you in here and able to answer calls. I'm sure we only barely touched half of the things that women are wondering about, but I think every little bit helps. So thank you. That was Dr. Stephanie Fisher, the interim senior medical director of gynecology and specialized programs at BC Women's Hospital and Health Centre, and Cally Wesson, the president and CEO of the BC Women's Health Foundation. They joined us in studio. And you can join us next Monday for the second segment in our Menopause Mondays series this month. That's it for our show for today. Thanks for joining us.